Good morning. It seems that everyone is bike packing these days. Katie Kookaburra and Juliet Elliott have just done their bike packing trip around the Scottish Islands. Now here I am, adding my tuppence halfpenny's worth. But what I want to talk to you about is how to bike pack on an e-bike. The benefits of bike packing on an e-bike are simple. The assist takes away the extra weight that you've got loaded on your bike, and it also makes those interminable climbs with a fully laden bike a bit easier. So why don't people do it more often? Well, there's often a fear that they will run out of assist, particularly on those interminable climbs. So how can you allay those fears? Is it possible to bike pack on an e-bike? The obvious answer is yes. With careful route planning, you'll be able to find the known range of your bike and use it to determine the distance you can go between two charging points. And when I talk about known range, I'm not talking about the range as identified by the manufacturer. You can forget about that. I'm talking about the range that you yourself have found out about from riding your bike. And it doesn't matter if the range is 50 kilometers or 150 kilometers. It just needs to be a known figure. Oi, oi. Here comes the sun, tra-da-da-da. Oh, bloody beautiful. I'm finding it a bit tricky talking to you as I'm riding, so we're just going to nip to a nice little spot and I can carry on chatting to you there. Right, that's better. Now what are we talking about? Known range. Now, I would say known range has got nothing to do with what the specifications are for your bike. It's down to what you've found out having ridden your bike, and you need to have a good idea about what you're capable of on your bike over the sort of terrain that you're likely to find on your ride. Now, this does take the impetuousness out of your riding. You will need to plan, possibly quite thoroughly, how you're going to do this trip, where you're going to stop. The easiest way to do this, of course, is to stay in hotels, hostels, Airbnbs or campsites that can offer a power outlet for your bike. It's the easiest thing you can possibly do. You get on your bike, you know where you're going to end the day, you know you can get there, you can enjoy the day. Perfect. Now I define my known range in terms of how many meters I can climb on my bike. Now I'm fortunate, I suppose, that I've got a range extender that I built, which offers me an awful lot more range than a lot of e-bikes. I found out that over rolling terrain with some serious hills in it, I can climb approximately 2,000 to 2,400 meters. So on my route planning, I would be looking to have no more than about 1,800 meters of climbing between full charges. Now, that's quite a lot. It's actually more than I'd want to do in a day, most likely. So that does give me the option of being able to stop somewhere that doesn't have a charging point and wild camp, maybe even for a couple of days if it's on flatter terrain. And if it is flatter terrain, then I can start thinking about how many kilometers I can do, because on flat terrain you turn the assist off, so it's as far as you want to go. And for me, it's how far my bottom wants to go. So I find that my bottom doesn't really like doing more than about 120 kilometers a day. And 100 kilometers a day is a lot. You don't need to do that at all. If you're doing 120 kilometers a day, you're on the bike for most of the day, really. So I'd say that takes away some of the enjoyment. I like exploring and adventure, and you can't really adventure and explore if you've got your head down in a racing tuck, just so you can get your kilometres in for the day. I'd suggest that you enjoy it, enjoy yourself, enjoy the bike, enjoy the ride, because bike packing is pure enjoyment, knowing that you don't have to get home that night, that you can stay out. Wild camping is fantastic, but even if you're staying out in a beautiful luxury hotel, it's still an adventure, so make the most of it. But something I really would suggest is don't be overconfident in what you can do. Start small, because then you know you'll be able to get there. You won't have any range anxiety, and range anxiety is real for a lot of people. It's why a lot of people aren't going to use their e-bike for bike packing. So just take it easy. Start small, start flat. Do something that's going to be hugely enjoyable, that's maybe an overnighter or a 2-night stop, maybe in an Airbnb or a campsite with power, and just enjoy it. So the big question is where to plug in. Now, most e-bikes will take between 5 and 7 hours to fully charge. The most obvious way of doing that is overnight, because you can plug in and it's charged for the next day and you carry on. You haven't got to think about anything during the day. You know you've got your battery charged each night and away you go again. So the obvious place for that is hotels, hostels, Airbnbs and campsites where you can plug in a power outlet. You might need to take an adapter for that. Out here in Spain, I'm noticing that more and more hotels are offering specific packages for cyclists, particularly along the Via Verdes, the greenways. They're starting to realise the potential of actually offering a charging point for people on their e-bikes. This is also true of popular tourist destinations like in the Pyrenees. I was in Ainsa, a beautiful medieval stone town, and I stopped at a hotel there that offered, a clinical bicycle room. It was like an operating theatre. It had a workshop, it had bike racks, it had power points, secure, and they advertise it as a thing for them, because Ainsa is a beautiful, absolutely stunningly beautiful part of the pre-Pyrenees, and they get a lot of cyclists through. Other hotels, though, can be more awkward. I don't think they like the look of a cyclist in lycra, possibly sweating, pushing a heavily laden bike into their foyer. And some have got a point, because if you need a lift to get to your room, a lot of bike packers will have mudguards on their bike, and the only way you can really get a bike into a lift is by upending it and pushing it along vertically. If you've got mudguards, you can't do that. So it does make it quite awkward. They also worry about whether their carpets will get dirty. Their other legitimate concern is whether your bike will actually cause an impediment to you getting out of your room in case of fire. So these problems can be surmounted by haggling in cash. It's surprising what they'll allow to go on with cash in hand. Actually, what makes more sense is to arrange everything in advance. Again, it takes out the spontaneity of a trip. For me, I would much rather plan every stop with a pre-booked room that they've agreed that I can take my bike into, or leave it somewhere in secure storage with power. But always take email confirmation of exactly what you've arranged. The hotel concierge on the night may not agree, in which case you can prove it. There's no point in arguing about these things. But in my experience, it's Airbnbs that offer both the best value and also the most accommodating of hosts. They kind of will do almost anything to help you, whether it's an extension lead so you can plug in your bike somewhere safe, or whether it's making sure that they've got somewhere that you can put your bike next to a power outlet. But bear in mind, some might have legitimate concerns about recharging an e-bike on their property. They may have seen news stories where scooters and bikes, chargers are all catching fire willy-nilly. It is fair enough, those fears aren't unfounded. But if you want to go off the beaten track, and who doesn't, and ride where you want, investigating interesting looking roads or tracks on a whim, you'll need a lot of cheek to find charging points during your day's riding. Topping up in cafes or wherever you can bit by bit. It's also here that bikes that use modern smart chargers score. Instead of the 5 to 7 hours to charge your bike, some, like the new Orbea Gain, up the initial bulk charge to 4 amps rather than the standard 2, just for the first 60 to 90 minutes. This will recover up to 80% of the total battery charge in that time. Now what this potentially means is that all of your necessary charging could be done for the trip during the day. So as long as you consume enough coffee and cake, you're good to go. But even with standard chargers, useful charging can be achieved during pit stops. During the day, be prepared to ask for a swift top-up wherever you stop at bars and cafes. Most are happy to let you plug in, especially if you offer to pay. Work out how much an hour of charging is. When I rode on the Orbea Gain, 4 amps at 230 volts was roughly a kilowatt of power per hour. Out here, roughly 28 cents. I would offer €1 or 2. At cafes, just offer to tip the bar person or waiter, but don't plug in without asking. Cafes and bars are just the tip of the iceberg. Petrol station attendants may be happy for you to wheel your bike in and plug in next to the drinks fridge, particularly if you buy enough snacks. Now these may also be air conditioned and offer a really welcome cool half hour out of the sun. Don't ignore swimming pools, town halls, libraries and other municipal buildings. All may be happy to help. This may also give you an opportunity to leave your bike securely as it charges and have a wander around a town. They might be thrilled that you're touristing in their small town. Now I've plugged into the shaver point in recreation stops like this one. Public areas for barbecuing and play areas always seem to have trees which could really be used for hammock camping, but they often have loos, and sometimes the gents' loos have a socket for shaving. And I've done just about 40 minutes. It's about as long as I can bear before wanting to get underway again. Other people, far cheekier than me, have used an adapter to plug their charger in to a light fitting. You literally unplug the bulb and plug in an adapter, charge your bike. There's building sites. It's probably not their house, and it's probably not their power. Builders are thirsty. Offer to go and buy them a beer or a coffee and bring it back to them, and they'll let you plug in for an hour. And even if they're using a generator on site, you could possibly get a charge from that, but you do need to be careful. A lot of generators don't produce suitable electricity for a very advanced bit of kit like a charger. It needs to have a very, very smooth sort of electricity for it. So don't be too disappointed if it doesn't work. But you can try anyway. Now, I've not tried this one myself, but I know e-bikers who have actually just struck up a conversation with people in their gardens doing some gardening and asked cheekily, can I have an hour's top up? And they've said yes. What I'm trying to say, I suppose, is get creative, be friendly, and be prepared to pay. So that's where to plug in. But there's lots of other stuff too. Well, actually this one is also a bit about where to plug in. Solar panels. Unless you have a very large solar panel, you can forget about it. When I talk about very large, I'm talking about towing it around on a trailer. Now, I know someone who did this. I was on an e-bike forum, and this chap was cycling around the Highlands of Scotland on his e-bike, towing a large solar panel. It worked really well. I think he was out for 2 or 3 weeks, and there was only one day where he couldn't ride because it was just too rainy. He was actually charging up a battery as he went to use it for storage so he could recharge his batteries in his bike. So he had pretty much all bases covered. So cloudy days weren't really a problem for him. I had a quick look online and I found this guy as well. Now his trailer with his solar panel on it rotates to face the sun at all times. Another consideration would be to buy a range extender. Most range extenders are actually small battery chargers and they don't really work, well, they work fine. But the range extender I built is basically an extender to your battery. It works in parallel. It becomes a part of the battery, which does give you an awful lot more range. The downside of all range extenders is that when you are depleted, it's going to take you twice as long to recharge. Another thing to consider is just a general safety thing. Your e-bike laden up a long hill in summer could overheat. It's unlikely it'll overheat, but it's something you just need to be aware of. If you feel that it's struggling, or if there does seem to be any form of difficulty, just stop and have another break. Also make sure that your charger is in a completely watertight bag. Do not plug it in if there is any sign of damp on it. Well, the last real thing I wanted to talk to you about is packing. Pack light. The lighter you pack, the more range you will have. So for example, for me, I bought a very light tent. The Lanshan tent that I have weighs less than a kilo. That just adds to the range, it adds to the enjoyment. Climbing a hill with a really heavy bike is horrible. Always go through your kit twice, 3 times to plan, to see what you don't need, not what you will need, what you won't need. Clothes, generally, you'll be packing far too many. You probably need 2 pairs of bib shorts. You wear one. When you get to your stop that night, you wash it. The next day you dry it, overnight you dry it. The next day you dry it on the bike if necessary. You've then got another night for it to dry, and you put it on the... It's ages. Lycra dries like that. And if you don't know about this little tip, once you've washed out, if you're in a hotel or have a towel, once you've washed out your bib shorts, roll them in a towel and then tread on them. It draws all the moisture out of that, your foam chamois, and it just makes it dry so much quicker. But of course the lightest packing of all is a credit card. Credit card just means you can stay in hotels every night, you get a full charge every night, and to be honest, it is the easiest way, most convenient way, and the most enjoyable way of bike packing. Unfortunately, it's also the most expensive way. So for me, I'm happy with my wild camping. Thank you. Well, that's about all I can think of for now. E-bike bike packing with a reasonable compromise can provide the freedom offered by unassisted bike packing. The compromise will likely be your overall route. Crossing the Gobi Desert or the Russian steppes is probably out. For many, the lure of the unknown may have to be ignored in favour of a carefully planned route. But for many, planning the route, together with preparing your bike and what to take, is every bit as enjoyable as the ride itself, and will occupy weeks or even months before you even set out on your next adventure. I've got loads of adventures planned, so if you enjoyed this video or found it useful, subscribe and you'll get notifications of my next adventure. But until then, thanks for watching.